Hello and welcome to the latest episode of The Hex with Daniel Robertson, Armand Kafai, John Arnold. The Club World Cup play-in game is in the books. We have a new continental champion in CONCACAF and so much more to talk about as we head into the busy summer of soccer. So we have got 6 topics. Let's get into it. John, a blockbuster night at BMO Stadium in Los Angeles where LAFC came from a goal down to beat Club America, secure the $10 million spot in the Club World Cup, where they will face Chelsea, Esperance de Tunis, and Flamengo. How did they pull this one off?
I mean, persistence, I think riding the wave a bit, momentum, but also you could just say Denny Bouanga, right?
Yeah.
You know, we talked about America struggling to stop Alexis Vega as this sort of all-conquering force, outside player who can tuck inside, who can score for himself, or who can set up goals. Bouanga's the same, and I think like he had more stamina even than some of the players, Vega specifically, because it's the last minute of the game, and this guy's still like darting into the end line, brushing off fullbacks and creating some danger. The first goal's from a set piece. The second goal basically is from him after Andres Jardine, the America manager, is like, I got to stop this guy just ripping my fullbacks out. I'm going to put in some fresh legs. So Bouanga goes down the middle, partners with Giroud, and then it's in the back of the net. You know, for America, it's a huge disappointment. Big week that turned into a bit of a nightmare. They lose Liga MX, then they lose this potential Club World Cup spot, and they had it not in the bag, but they had it, right? They were up 1-0 thanks to the penalty, and all they had to do was see it out, but they couldn't get it done. So at the end of the day, how did LAFC do it? With, I think, a great attitude, by not letting, you know, the game situation get the best of them, and by having the best player on the field.
It's funny, like, I was just thinking about it as you mentioned Club America, the week that they've had. So there's kind of 3 teams around the world that you really wouldn't want to be heading into this summer. If you look at Arsenal, Inter Milan, and Club America, have all basically had the same season. Played great in the league, made it to the semifinals or final of their international competition. And when they look back at this season, there's absolutely nothing to show for it and nothing in the trophy case, which is not something that Club America is used to. And what shocked me so much watching the game was to give up a game-tying goal off a set piece in the 90th minute, basically, when there's $10 million on the line. And make no mistake, like you could see in the celebrations of Andre Jardine and Club America, like this game was incredibly important to them. We'll talk about player compensation in a minute, but they all probably lost, if not tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially, by giving up a 90th minute goal. And you just don't see this from Club America. And obviously we'll talk about LAFC and we'll give them their flowers and they'll have plenty of time in Club World Cup to impress. But again, this feels somewhat, does Club America have eras? It's tough to say, but it feels like the end of an era.
No. I understand what you're saying, and there's people in Mexico that are trying to make it that, right? That, oh, well, this shows that Andres Jardine should leave, or this shows that they should even move on from Andres Jardine. Pump the brakes, man.
Well,
this guy won 3 Mexican titles in a row, the first coach ever to do that in short tournaments. They were in the final. This game, whatever, right? Yeah, like they didn't manage this game well, but it's not like this game was made up out of thin air. So it's not like all of a sudden it's like, oh, well.
But you don't expect LAFC, you don't expect an MLS team to come back from behind on the biggest team in the continent when $10 million is on the line. That's a big thing.
Yeah, but at the same time, like I think, like I said to you guys last night when we got together to watch the CONCACAF Champions Cup final, that like I felt like the game had a very Leagues Cup feel for a couple different reasons. Sure. One, because it was sort of a neutral environment. I think to FIFA's credit, they said the game is being hosted by LA, but we got to make sure that America fans are there, and they were there, and they were in full force. The second thing is I think the Liga MX team arrived having already played games with some fatigue, there's a lot going on in the mentality, and I think that can't be discounted either, especially when you talk about how far into the game things started to go south. It was really even in the first half,
Yeah.
but then in the second half, when does the momentum start shifting? Quite late, right? Now,
Yeah.
once the momentum shifts, there was no getting it back. I think that's what we're not used to seeing from America, right? But end of an era? No, man, no. I just don't buy that. Horrible week, worst week in club history, maybe, but like also the fact that you're in these places, that you're in this position, speaks very well to what America's been doing in the past, like in the very recent history. I think that you could, if anything, should get criticized about America not being in the Club World Cup, it's their performances in past CONCACAF Champions Cup, because that's still what's eluding. Jardine, that's what's eluded America in the last couple of years. That being said, like Cruz Azul just tied America as the most successful team all time in the tournament, so it's not like they're bums in the CCC either.
Yeah, there's so much at play here in that match, and again, like we said last week, there's a WWE element to it. There's some ridiculous things to it. But I thought so. There was a quote from Cherundolo after the game. He said, "As a club, I think it puts you above and beyond many other clubs in MLS. I think it puts you in a different level, and it's a help for the entire league, putting the league on the map at the Club World Cup." And Armand, you talked a little bit about this last week with LAFC. As much as it's maybe back to the drawing board for Club America, this is a springboard potentially. You don't want to say like franchise altering thing for LAFC, because they've always been one of the best franchises in MLS, but maybe there were cracks showing. Steve Cherundolo's leaving after this season, but now it opens up everything for them.
And also when you talk to, when you heard LAFC players talk about this game, Denny Bouanga came out and says bigger than MLS Cup because of what this means for them on an international stage. And when you look at the group that LAFC LAFC has, I mean, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they could potentially advance. I mean,
no, absolutely not.
The third best team in that group. But when you look at what it means for them, it allows them another cup competition. It allows kind of Cherundolo, a guy who's already announced, hey, I'm out of here at the end of the year, to kind of almost another swan song. I wonder what impact it's going to have to their MLS season, because, and that's not really, I don't think that matters as much, but with this being thrown in there, their matches get moved around that weren't moved around to begin with. They didn't have this planned in the beginning, but now you're kind of thrown into this competition. For LAFC, I mean, it means a lot. And also, I think it means a lot for the players as well, too. John, we spoke about it, how for a guy like Denny Bouanga, this might be a shop window for him, where he can show off, hey, like, this is how I'm playing, this is how I look, etc. And a lot of these other players, I think, can take the same initiative as well, where it seems like some other clubs, and we're going to talk about it, are taking it a little bit differently, which is a totally understandable reason why they are. When we're talking about the prize money in Seattle, we'll talk about that later. But for LAFC, for right now, it just seems like it's pure jubilation to be in this tournament,
because it's undeserved, right? Anytime you have an undeserved gift, you feel grateful. I think it is legacy for Cherundolo, and I think that the interesting thing about the shop window idea, Armand, is like, yeah, in theory, maybe Bouanga gets spotted or shows that he can do it against a club like Chelsea. On the other hand, it might be a good use of your extra $10 million to say, hey, like, actually, no, we're going to give you a juicier contract. Sure. You and two other guys are going to come back. So I think that'll be interesting to watch. It'll be fascinating to watch those machinations. Don't overlook Esperance de Tunis. Okay. You know who their best player is? Yeah, no, me either, but it's okay. I mean, I do want to go to a game there one day, but not sure what they're going to bring to Nashville.
That is one of the all-time wild competitive, like, not categories. What's the Mad Libs fixtures? It's going to be happening in American soccer. Where were you when LAFC played Esperance de Tunis at Geodis Park in Nashville?
It's also funny because the other MLS clubs, they get to stay near their home, but because they're replacing Leon, LAFC has to bounce all over the place. Like, it's pretty funny. I'm interested to see how that will impact like attendance and stuff like that again, because I mean, are there a lot of?
There's not going to be many people at those games. Period.
Like, the thing is that if you had to make a Nashville, people would have showed up for sure. Yes. But LAFC, it's a difficult one.
A real trophy was handed out on Sunday night in Mexico City at the Estadio Olímpico Universitario as Cruz Azul took home the CONCACAF Champions Cup 5-0 winners, a familiar scoreline across the international championships this weekend. Who, if you had the parlay of 5-0 in both games, you can probably go ahead and retire on that one.
Sponsor the show.
Please donate some money to the show. But Armand, Cruz Azul 5-0 winners. Was this Cruz Azul dominant winning? Was it Vancouver losing? Where do you kind of sit on this?
I think it was Cruz Azul domination. I don't think there's anything about Vancouver. I don't think Vancouver could have done, like, they didn't get off the bus, man. They looked absolutely horrendous. They recorded 0 shots that had 0 expected goals, 0.0, not 0.0, not 0.01, but flat out 0. And Cruz Azul punched them in the mouth early, and I don't think we saw them produce one quality chance, like, throughout the entire game, even when it was 5-0.
0.
Even when it was 5-0, they did nothing. And for me, they didn't come in there with a fight either. It just kind of seemed like, all right, we're here. Let's see what happens. Oh, shit. The Cruz Azul has hands. And they really just couldn't recover from there. And the press, there was sloppy passing in the back. It was very characteristic when you watch what Vancouver does to other MLS teams. Cruz Azul did that to Vancouver and made them look like a pretty poor MLS team. And the goals were great, but again, a lot of them were just cut off Vancouver mistakes. But Cruz Azul dominated the game. They really choke-held Vancouver, and there could be a lot of missteps down the way. Where
you think the stage was too big?
Yes, the lights were too bright for them.
Dude, that's what it seemed like to me, because you think about, like, this is what a lot of times these matches look like earlier in the tournament.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we've all seen this movie before if we're talking about a quarterfinal. But the fact that Vancouver not only had gotten to the final, but had done so by getting past Rayados and Pumas, it's like, oh, they're going to hang, right? They've been so good in the domestic season. They've been so impressive in CCC. And look, like, we can sort of, we'll get into the, MLS season and some other topics as well. Like, Inter Miami, I put in that, not in the same category historically as like Rayados and Pumas, but you look at Pumas squad compared to Miami.
Right.
It's more impressive that you got past Inter Miami for me. So they got past all these teams, and then it did feel like there was just something anemically, like just something about the attitude or the game plan that just wasn't up to it, which is a big surprise because they had been kind of that team where you're like, all right, I guess I have to start doubting these guys, and then you felt dumb forever believing.
And it's not like with Vancouver, you can say like, oh, they didn't know how to deal with the altitude, or, oh, they didn't deal with this or that. Because when you're down 4-0 at halftime, you can't blame anything on
food poisoning.
Altitude. It wasn't like they hit a wall.
For that,
yeah, they didn't hit a wall in the 70th minute. None of that happened. It just felt like they were grossly unprepared. And, we talked about this last night a little bit. And Armand, you were mentioning it this morning, like, Vancouver played on Wednesday in MLS, and that all seemed super curious to all of us because MLS would have moved the fixture if they had wanted to, and Vancouver said they didn't want to do that, right?
Yeah, Axel Schuster came out, and it seems like they're saying that, like, if you read between the lines, they were trying to be like, oh, like MLS would have made us play. I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't buy that.
He came out and said that the data said this. To be honest, that's BS. No way data said play midweek and then go to your continental final. That's stupid.
In Mexico City.
There's 0% chance that data said that. It looks like they're trying to hide underneath something. I don't get that move at all. And maybe, like, they didn't have Sebastian Berhalter in that game either. He was suspended. Is he that big of a deal where Andres Cubas just looks like a complete...
No.
Like,
They're
I mean, Cubas, especially against Miami, looks very good, right? I think that, like, he's been one of a key part of this run. He had a terrible game. A lot of guys had terrible games. I don't think there's anyone who you're like, well, at least...
No.
0.
It was like Inter Milan. I saw like the game, the ratings of the game. Like no player got over a 3 in like the Inter Milan game. I mean, you wouldn't have given a good rating to anyone. Takaoka didn't play well. No. I mean, no one played well. They didn't close anyone down from space. It's like they were saying, "Oh, these guys aren't going to beat us from 20 yards." Like, please, that's ridiculous. A lot of egg on their face, and it's a bummer too because at this point, Vancouver, where do they go from here? Do you say, okay, let's regroup, we're still good in MLS now? Or do MLS teams say, oh, the luster is off of Vancouver and they're just kind of a middle of the pack MLS team? I guess we'll see. So with these two games in the books, two MLS versus Liga MX showdowns where MLS 1-1, Liga MX 1-1, we're about 6 weeks away from League's Cup. Obviously, Gold Cup is coming up, which is kind of sometimes a referendum on MLS versus Liga MX. But anyways, which result from this weekend says more about the referendum on MLS versus Liga MX? Because to me, this says a lot. I think we've said it already on the show. I think that this game says more about MLS. I think MLS comes out looking better than Liga MX does. I don't think anyone was paying too much attention on Sunday night, to be honest. I don't think it says anything about it for MLS to lose to a Liga MX team in a final. That is business as usual. For me, it's what Steve Cherundolo said. MLS has gotten to the point, from not just from this game, but from others, that they have proven they have teams that are in the top tier that can compete in any game with Liga MX. There may be some pretenders like Vancouver that pop up from time to time, but to beat Club America in a game with $10 million on the line tells me that there are MLS teams with the mentality of Liga MX teams at this point, which I don't think is something we could have said recently.
I was going to go the opposite way, man, and say that I think that the Cruz Azul Vancouver result gives us a more clear picture of where these two leagues are at. Not necessarily that Mexico is that much ahead, but Vancouver, man, you're acting like Vancouver is some sort of like kind of like their Inter. Like they're sitting 13th in the table and they're like a random ups. This is the best team in MLS right now.
Right now, sure, but like no one's looking at the
Cruz Azul, not the best team in Mexico right now.
Oh no. Well, they're close. I mean, they're probably top. They're one of the
and they won 5-0.
Historically, they're one of the top teams in Mexico, correct?
They're historically good, and they have a really good roster. And like you could even say, like, oh, Maciej Bogusz, came from MLS. Vicente Sanchez played in MLS. I think that game, not necessarily the blowout, but just the fact that like MLS teams still cannot habitually get it done in Mexico says a ton. Because I'm telling you, man, that environment in LA was great. That's League's Cup, man. When Mexican teams go to the U.S., now they're starting to struggle. That's different and that's new. And I think you could say, oh, like things are not as different as they once were. And okay, Mexico has the benefit of altitude or whatever. But like when you compare these two leagues, Liga MX is still a better league than MLS. And the teams show it consistently. But the gap, we always talk about the gap. I do think it's fair to say on certain days, certain teams are as good or better.
I think it's fair to say from this that the top four in MLS, and maybe this is obviously something that existed before a week ago. It's not like this changed in 3 days, but the top four in MLS traditionally, if I was to take the top four teams, let's say LAFC, Columbus, Inter Miami, choose one more. I'm talking about over the last 24 months. Let's just say
their rears kicked by Pachuca team that was also not one of the best Mexican teams that year.
But let's say over the last 24 months, top teams by mentality.
I mean, Columbus has to be in there, and they didn't do it.
But what I'm saying is LAFC has proven that every top four team in MLS can compete with the top four teams in Liga MX at this point. And okay, if it's in America, if it's in the United States, it's probably gonna be tough on the Liga MX teams, and if it's in Mexico, it's probably gonna be tough on the MLS teams. That's a huge departure from where we were at like 3 years ago. So I think there is that.
Yeah, I think that it's fair to say there's progress. For a long time, I was pointing out that Mexico was getting better. Everyone would say MLS is getting better, but it's not getting better enough to catch Mexico. And everyone was acting like Mexico just stays still, where I think Liga MX was also improving. Now I'm not so sure I'd say that. There's a lot of things that are changing about the league or changing slowly. And I do think that, like, yes, you can say that top MLS teams are starting to compete. But when you look at, like, I think that Vancouver is the best MLS team right now. I think they're the best. They're the number one team in the ESPN FC Power Rankings. They're the team that we probably, before last week, would have said is the best team, right? Number two, you said Columbus. Columbus absolutely deserves to be there. Great team. Got destroyed. They did get past Monterrey, right? They did get past Tigres. These are big results over 2 games where we kind of have that great equalizer of, okay, first leg, second leg.
Armand, you got anything to add?
Were they going to come back from the second leg, bro? If there was a second leg in Vancouver next week, you think they'd come back?
Hell no. That obviously, but maybe they would have played it a little bit different.
And you think that if there was a second leg in Mexico City for this LAFC America series, that LAFC would still win?
Well, they would have played the game completely differently. I think that's tough to say. Like they would have played the game differently. But yes, I do think LAFC would have won that because I think that Denis Bouanga is better than any player that LAFC has at this point, and he was destroying them. But that's a fair point, though. That's an interesting thought.
Okay, when it comes down to this, we've seen in the Leagues Cup that Liga MX teams struggle. They don't necessarily have the same strength they do in Mexico, and like John said, that gap has almost closed. But the gap still basically remains, like when it comes to a lot of these bigger matches where an MLS team will go, and don't forget, Cruz Azul crushed Seattle in the Triple C,
sure.
and there. Vancouver was the outlier. Columbus was the outlier. Yes, you will get these
but Vancouver beat Monterrey. Like Monterrey is a jewel of Liga MX too.
Monterrey got bounced in the first round.
When's the last? I mean, yes, they spend a lot of money. Yes, they're in the Club World Cup, and they won a previous CCC. So,
but like, when it comes to this, I think when you look at this one game that was thrown in the calendar within 3-4 weeks versus the competition of the Triple C. The Liga MX, the win that Cruz Azul had, in my opinion, was what is kind of we're expected to see. Almost, we've seen that consistently with Liga MX teams dominating them, and to me, part of it is because again, we speak about this quite a bit. Just the roster and the way that the roster rules are in MLS. Yes, it's the gap. There is more money being pumped into the upper ends of the rosters in MLS, but we always talk about how the middle, the players that are making $1 million, there's quite a bit more in Liga MX than there are, or in that range, than in MLS.
Real quick, Daniel, game this out. Do your 4 MLS teams for me. Who are the 4? If you're going to say Grandes in Mexico, and you're including Monterrey, so let's kick out Chivas. So
probably going Galaxy, LAFC, Columbus, and Miami. Now, take out obviously with the Galaxy. There's this year. There's different
I was going to say Cincinnati should be in there, and they got smoked by a Tigres team that had fired their manager, promoted a midfielder to manager, and they still were only able to get a 1-1 draw at home and then lost 3-1 on the road this year.
But 2 of those teams, 2 of the MLS teams made the semifinals, and 2 of the Liga MX teams made the semifinals.
But that was all because of the bracket, man. I mean, for the most part, that's because of the bracket. Pumas, they get bounced by Vancouver, but then Vancouver in that same stadium can't do it. They didn't answer the bell, man. I just think that, yes, MLS, and it is progress. I'm not arguing with you that that's not progress, but when you look at when these teams come together in competitive matches and the playing field is relatively level, and I'm not even trying to say it was last night because it's a home game for Cruz Azul, it's at altitude, etc. But they come out, man. Galaxy also played Tigres this thing. Tigres, not a good season, and they still got past the Galaxy without.
Yeah, and they were deer in headlights. I guess at this point, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. One team that has known they would be in Club World Cup for quite a while is the Seattle Sounders, who really made some waves on Sunday afternoon before the Triple C final. They had the last MLS game before a little bit of a break against Minnesota United. And when they came out to warm-ups, they were wearing shirts that were the Monopoly guy. Does he have a name? Monopoly guy?
Monopoly Man?
Monopoly Man? Okay, Johnny Monopoly. He had an MLS hat on, and he was holding his money bag with FIFA on the money bag. And then after the game, Stefan Fry and Christian Roldan spoke. The only interview they gave in the locker room, basically 15 minutes of questions on the money around the Club World Cup. And I know this is a long intro, but basically what is happening is every team, MLS teams, are getting a minimum of about $10 million. Other teams are getting more, the European teams, etc. But there is a guarantee of almost $10 million to MLS teams for playing in this competition that can go up every round that they make it farther. Based on the CBA, Armand, correct me if I'm wrong, MLS players get to split a maximum of $1 million. As it is currently set up, they get to split a maximum of $1 million from this tournament, and that is not per round, that is total. What's going on here? What are your thoughts on this? What needs to be fixed? How does this kind of get right? Because it's not a great look.
So when remember, this Club World Cup with all this money is was a very new phenomenon.
Very new.
It's not like I think they announced the money in March of like how much it would be for each team, etc. Within the CBA, it talks about compulsory tournaments and non-compulsory tournaments, essentially tournaments that are not tournaments that aren't listed in the CBA, which is the Open Cup, the Canadian Championship, the Triple C, which was called the CCL back then, Campeones Cup and Leagues Cup. Those tournaments are defined in the CBA. There's a small section that says, hey, if it's not any of these tournaments, if a team or if an MLS team receives prize money, up to $1 million will go to a player bonus,
which is conceivable, right? In general, because Open Cup is far below that. Doesn't the winner of the Open Cup get like $500,000 total or something like that?
Yeah, it's not high by any means, exactly. So obviously, this wasn't made with this in mind. If you break it down with like the minimum of like 26 players on the roster, if you split it evenly, it's like $30K per player or something along the lines of that, which is not much at all when it comes to how much some other players are making. For example, Real Madrid said, hey, we're going to make the bonus for our players winning the tournament $1 million per player, which is higher than what they've actually done for other tournaments like the Champions League. This tournament has a significant financial windfall for clubs. Remember, if you win a game, you get $2 million extra. If you draw a game, you get $1 million extra. And if you advance, there's more money down the line. For a team like Seattle, who they're in a group of death, they play Atletico Madrid, PSG, and Botafogo. I would be surprised if they get a point out of any of those games. When it comes
LAFC,
to
though, as we mentioned, and
exactly.
Miami might be the
LAFC,
according to Daniel, they should waltz through the group.
and Inter Miami too. Don't forget.
And Inter Miami and
the group, man.
Yeah.
Inter Miami and LAFC have a lot more favorable groups. But when it comes to it, I mean, all the Seattle guys, they came out and they said, hey, this is a distraction to us. We're talking to MLSPA. We're trying to get more conversation about this. Guys, there has to be more money on the table than $1 million. Like they can allocate some of the money. They're getting $10 million. And one thing that I'm still not sure about, and I've been trying to get more clarity on, is do the MLS teams get this money straight out, or does it get split amongst teams in the league? Is $30 million in the league going to be split amongst teams in the league? If that's the case, I mean,
not a good look.
There's another reason why MLS owners won't spend as much to begin with. They get compensated for the work of other teams. So for me, I mean, I think this is pretty clear. It has to change. I don't know. I think there's a chance that Seattle could say, "Hey, we're not going to play in this."
That's not gonna happen.
Man.
I think so.
Dude,
insane.
you think Infantino's going to let that happen after he was there parading around with the trophy? Nah, man.
And the players putting themselves in the shop window. The thing to me though is that and I watched almost all 15 minutes of the interview that Christian Roldan and Stefan Frei gave, and what I came away from that was these two guys, and Stefan Frei in particular, what an eloquent, the way that they speak is incredibly eloquent and incredibly fair and incredibly smart. And I find it, they were saying from the beginning, look, we've been asking about this for weeks, and this is not, just one player. Stefan Frei is a guy who is a cornerstone of the league for over a decade and one of the smartest players on and off the field in the league. And he's going to come at this from a very fair standpoint. And the point he made was, look, we don't get a bonus if we advance. We have already hit our cap. It was funny. He was like, look, we have no chance of winning this tournament. He said that in the interview. He's like, we have no chance of winning. But why would they want to add more games for themselves, make more money for people? It's tough.
Yeah, well, and I think that part of the reason that they've taken this approach with it, which I think is wise, is in American society, anytime we talk about wages and money, people, kind of either blush or, especially with athletes, oh, you got enough anyway. You're rich. I mean, look, like the fact that especially the leaders on the team who maybe you could say are rich are advocating to get more money for some of the players who are in a position where, look, Armand's sneezing at 30,000, not sneezing. I understand what you're saying, man. Relative to the other bonus in this competition, it's not a ton, but like those players who, if they get 60,000 instead of 30,000, suddenly everything changes or things change for their family.
Right.
I think it's great from the Sounders to be doing that. And I'm surprised that something wasn't worked out. I think we can all say the way Armand explained it, I thought was great. Hey, like this wasn't a named tournament, which is why it wasn't worked out separately. But this didn't exist in this way before. Well, let's get together. Let's all agree this is an exceptional situation. Let's come back to the table. Let's hammer something out. I hope they do that, and I hope that the players get kind of a equivalent bonus structure to what the African teams or the European teams or the South American teams are getting.
Moving to MLS for our last couple of segments, there were a ton of MLS games this last week, a midweek slate and a full, almost full end of weekend slate before MLS. A few teams are playing next week, but most teams are off before getting back to action in the middle of June. And we're going to talk, of course, about our MLS winners of the week. I'll get us kicked off on this one, guys. I'm going to the New York Red Bulls here. These guys like it when I kick us off. New York Red Bulls, okay? These Red Bulls, they do this every single year. They fly under the radar. They win a couple games. They lose a couple games. And yeah, right now they're in the middle of their win a couple games run. They'll probably lose a few games here too. But guys, okay, they beat Charlotte and Atlanta this week. Two very decent wins. An Atlanta team that had won 2 in a row. They have won 7 home games this year, most in MLS. And people talked a lot of crap about Maxim Choupo-Moting, that, oh, he wasn't producing, he's a flop, whatever.
It was the data boys.
The data boys really didn't like Choupo-Moting. Well, let me give you some data. He's got 6 goals in his last 6 games. This season, he has overperformed his expected goals, 4th most of any player in MLS, besides Ty Baribo, Zinkernagel, and Evander. That's some pretty good company to be in right there, to outperform what you should be doing. Open Cup quarterfinal. And remember, these guys were the MLS Cup runners-up last season, okay? They're not coming out of nowhere here. So I want to give a shout-out to the Red Bulls for a 6-point week, getting themselves up to the top, near the top of the table. And again, Choupo-Moting, a guy that could play in, I think we might see him in the All-Star game, and he's going to be an interesting one to watch in Leagues Cup.
Still more than 7 points off the top of the table, but we'll give it to you. My winner of the weekend is Lionel Messi. If you've ever heard of him, 2 goals against the Columbus Crew, 2 goals against Montreal. Now, Montreal pretty terrible, but I'm going to say Inter Miami is back, and it's all because of Messi. You know, I heard the crew on MLS 360 saying that it was interesting that this turnaround has kind of happened after Messi did the interview with Michele, right? It's a surprise to see Messi speaking because he avoids the press studiously, but he kind of stepped up and wanted to do a post-match interview. And it seems like it kind of took a lot of the pressure back on himself. Hey, we're talking about Mascherano. We're talking about some of these young guys on the team. We're talking about how the defense still is. What about Messi? And all of a sudden he's back scoring goals. Him and Suarez just doing kind of what I think everyone imagined they would do when they came into the league, making it look easy. To do it against Montreal is one thing, but then this weekend to do it against a Columbus team that, while I don't agree with Daniel that they're better than most Liga MX teams, I do think it's a very good team. They've been historically quite strong. They got some needs they need to address. They're winless in what, like 7, 8, Armand? But overall, still Messi, my winner of the week.
Do you think, by the way, Inter Miami is going to add anyone this week in their window before?
Yes.
Triple C. That'll be very interesting.
You've seen the rumored players, yeah?
Brian Rodriguez.
But the thing is that, like, yes, I've seen that, but also Brian Rodriguez doesn't fix your biggest issue, which is you can't stop a soul from scoring a goal. So, you know.
They re-signed Usari.
But if
I did see that.
If Messi scores a hat trick, they don't need to stop anyone. We'll see how many goals he can get in Club World Cup. That'll be fun. Armand, your winner of the week?
I mean, it has to be the Galaxy, guys. They finally got a win. Can you believe that? After all the memes, after, you know,
were there a lot of memes?
Yeah, there's a Sweet 16
Yeah,
meme.
there were some
that
good
was
memes.
Hilarious.
The meme.
The LAFC fans they were killing it for a bit, but unfortunately those memes have to end. Look, the Galaxy have.
Unfortunately, those memes have to end.
Yeah, unfortunately, they were funny, man. I was waiting to see what 17 was going to be, but unfortunately, look, the Galaxy have actually had pretty decent performances. We saw their 2-2 draw in El Tráfico. Like, they had a tough result against San Jose midweek, but they go on, they beat RSL, one of the pretty worst form teams in MLS at the moment. So good for them. Get the win. Maybe they can carry it forward after this long. I think they have a bit of a long break before our next match. The next match is St. Louis City on June 14th. So that could be another one where it could rack up another win. And all of a sudden, it's a 2-game winning streak for the Galaxy.
Stop.
Yeah, but they're on the road for the
man.
next 3. Dude, this club hires a data analyst, and all of a sudden Armand thinks they're the winner of the week.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Well, I will say there is no team that is looking forward to Leagues Cup probably more than the LA Galaxy to actually have games that matter for one more month of the season because they're not making the playoffs no matter what. I think didn't Dax McCarty say if they made the playoffs he would shave his
Sasha.
Or did Sasha say that he would shave his mustache and dye his hair?
Right? It was shave his head, dye it, and shave his mustache. So I guess it's like a roots situation if he dyes the. I guess like Eminem.
And we are 17 weeks into the MLS season, guys. I don't know if you're math majors. I'm not, but half of 34 is 17, and that means we are halfway through the MLS season. So we thought it would be fun to do some MLS Midseason Awards. We are going to each take one award. We are going to take MVP, our, how do we put it? Biggest success, biggest surprise, and biggest disappointment, and then MLS Cup favorite. So Armand, why don't we start with you? The biggest surprise in a positive way and the biggest disappointment in a negative way for the MLS season so far. I'm wondering if you're going to go where I think you're going to go.
Well, we'll see. I hope I'm reading your mind, or maybe I don't hope I'm reading your mind. When it comes to the biggest, I would say success, I was really torn between 3 teams.
What? Stop it! No, oh my god!
Oh, you want me to give you a preface? Before. Okay, damn! I can't even get a little build up. I can't get it. The crowd going.
This in our preseason awards too, where
I can't get the crowd going. Come on, man! It's San Diego FC for me, guys. When it comes to look, they're an expansion team. Expansion teams historically struggle. They don't have the resources as much as other MLS teams. They bring a guy, Tyler Heaps. He has an interview and he goes, "Yeah, we're gonna play like this." And everyone goes, "Okay, that sounds great in theory, but are you actually gonna do it?" And guess what? They have. They've gotten great performances from Chucky Lozano, who went off injured. Hope he's okay for Gold Cup. Andres Dreyer. Even their goalkeeper, Ciro Dos Santos, who's not really a great goalkeeper known or anything, he's actually had pretty decent performances as well. They've imposed a style on teams that is very hard to replicate when it comes to an expansion.
You think it's Miami wishes they had CJ Dos Santos still?
I wish they had him back
on the bench behind Drake Callender as well.
Yeah, they wish they had him back. So for me, the biggest success is San Diego FC. And for my biggest disappointment, I mean, guys, I don't think it's a question where we're going to go with this. It's Atlanta United. I mean, come on. You spent $50-something million to sit below DC United, who you have one of their DPs on your roster, and they got a couple wins back to back, which were nice, but then again they lost again over the weekend. And look, like there's still gonna be some, I think, hiccups down the way. We've kind of talked about this privately between us, but a guy like Emmanuel Latte-Loth, who had a really long season, who had no break, and is coming into the league off no break, is he going to fall off? Is he going to fall off a cliff?
Too.
And a guy like Almiron as well. Are these guys going to fall off a cliff later on and just really slow start going to hurt them later? You can't spend this much money and be in 13th place in the Eastern Conference. And yes, I know they're only, only 8 points out of a playoff spot. Or play-in spot.
Daniel say they're top of the league.
That's not good.
It's not great. I had them like top 3 or 4 in MLS, and they're just limping the way. They look rough. Sometimes not even fun to watch. For me, Atlanta United, please be better. We were hoping better of you.
Got to give Nashville a little bit of love too for biggest surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I was torn. I was gonna say that was one of the things I was torn upon, but then you guys told me to shut the hell up. So
That's right.
Well, it's for me in the MVP race. It is interesting because I don't feel like there's anyone super like setting themselves apart. You kind of got to decide what your criteria are for MVP. And for me, it's what the award is named most valuable player. John, you already mentioned it, Lionel Messi. I think you can't go past him for MVP. Yeah, okay, Ty Baribo, nice season. Dreyer, you mentioned he's having a really nice season. You could replace those players and probably find someone else. You cannot replace Lionel Messi. And quietly, it seems like he's not having a good season. He's top 3 in MLS in goals and assists. Like, what do you want to say? It doesn't feel like he's hit his stride yet.
He's number 1 in goals and assists.
Huh?
He's number one in goals and assists.
Well, combined, yes. I mean, he's top three
in
in goals.
both categories.
He's top three. Yeah, top three in both categories. No one else even touches that. And all he's done in the last 7 days, 5 goals and 3 assists. So please stay healthy with Argentina this week so we can see you in Club World Cup. Like, just please don't pick up a knock because we all want to see it.
He doesn't need the match bonuses, I'll tell you that much.
That's true. Maybe he can pass those along to his teammates. But the MVP, to me, it's Lionel Messi. Again, there's a few other guys. I think Mukhtar is having a nice year as well, but can't look past him. John, right now, leader in the clubhouse. Who is the MLS Cup favorite?
I struggled with this.
Yeah.
Because we talked about Inter Miami. They could be it, but we've seen their struggles. We've seen their issues. Philadelphia's leading the East. Very good team. We'll see. I don't feel like they have that difference maker. Ty Baribo's been amazing. But
look at the game against Dallas. Played 10-man Dallas this week and couldn't break them down.
Some changes as well. In the West, we're all Vancouver doubters after Sunday. San Diego expansion team. We think they'll probably fall off. Minnesota with their quirky style. Seattle, LA. They're going to be tired after Club World Cup. That's why I'm circling FC Cincinnati.
Wow.
Okay.
They're in a rough patch, but we think about defense wins championship is often true. Well, maybe not this past year with LA Galaxy, but defense is important, and we think their defense is strong. And the attack is already clicking for me. Denke's already got 10 goals, a fantastic addition. You haven't seen him struggle adapting to MLS. And Evander has been fantastic. When he's healthy, he gives the team something that very few players have. I don't think he's the MVP right now, but I think he could be in that conversation, especially by the end of the year. Maybe if you're looking at his numbers versus Messi. I think it's a team that has everything they need still to be the MLS Cup champion. I haven't really been a Cincy believer. And, this stretch isn't convincing me. They don't look great. But I do think that when I'm looking at all the different teams, they have the least obvious big problems to me, and a lot of times that is kind of what you need to have success in the playoffs.
Love it. Yeah, I think the only thing you would say about Cincy is being in the East, they're probably going to have to go through Columbus and Miami, and that's like, okay, it's a murderer's row. It's like, who's going to get out of the Western Conference in the NBA? It's very difficult. Whereas in the West, maybe things can break the right way, and you don't really maybe you have to win one really tough game, but beyond that, you don't. Can't argue with you, though. I mean, Cincinnati, and it's going to be really interesting to see, too. Armand, do they have a situation where they can add players in the summer, do you think, or are they pretty much standing pat?
They would have to clear some more allocation money, sure. I mean, they could change what's it called, roster pass, but I don't think they have the allocation money to add someone within there. They'd have to probably sell someone, clear some room, etc. before doing that. I mean, they're definitely in a rough patch, though. I'll tell you that. But like John says, sometimes it's players that they're proven.
Who would you pick?
Who would I pick? It's tough, but from what I've seen, I would more likely lean a team like. It's gonna sound crazy. Nashville.
No way. Get
Nashville.
Nashville's in the same boat for me, man. They can't. First of all, right now they can't finish games.
Right. Yeah. I think that will, but the ideas are there. I think with Nashville, when it comes to the way that they set up defensively, they're super organized. Yes, I saw the game against New York City FC where it looked kind of loose most, but the ideas are there. Mukhtar and Serge is finally playing the way that I think we expected him to play when he first came into the league, and I think those things are going to kind of gel later on as the year goes on.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad pick, man. But when I'm like, okay, you want to say, oh, Mukhtar and Serge, but Denke and Evander are gelling, and they've had less time together. To me, that's why Cincinnati is a little bit easier of a pick.
By the way, the Cincy League's Cup group is awesome. Monterrey, Juarez, and Chivas. That'll be a fun trio of games for League's Cup. But that'll wrap us up this week. As we get into next week, we will be heading into Club World Cup. Gold Cup is right around the corner. John's licking his lips to get things started on the international stage. Some fun friendlies this week as well, so we'll have plenty to talk about, plenty of rosters to dissect, and we will catch you next week on The Hex.